That last race left me with that unique blend of excitement and frustration that only NASCAR seems capable of delivering. You sit there watching everything unfold, feeling like you've got a solid grasp on how the entire day is shaping up, and then in just a matter of seconds, the whole script flips upside down completely. And what really stuck with me this time is that it's not just one big story emerging from the chaos. It's actually two distinct moments, two different perspectives, and honestly, two separate conversations that are going to keep fans buzzing and debating all week long. Because what went down out there on the track didn't merely shake up the results of that single race. It might actually reveal quite a bit about where certain drivers stand right now, both mentally and competitively, as we head into the next stretch of the season. So yeah, there's plenty to break down and analyze today. But real quick, if you're a true NASCAR fan like me, go ahead and smash that like button and think about subscribing while you're at it. This channel is brand new, and we're pushing hard to reach 15,000 subscribers. It's all about delivering real, authentic NASCAR talk straight from fans who live and breathe this sport every single week. Alright, let's dive right into the first story. And yeah, this one was tough to watch if you were tuned into how the race was developing throughout the afternoon. We're talking about Carson Hocevar and what should have been one of his most impressive performances at Martinsville Speedway in the Cookout 400. Hocevar lined up 7th on the grid, remained competitive from start to finish, and for the majority of that race, his number 77 Spire Motorsport Chevrolet Camaro showed legitimate top 15 speed, honestly even stronger than that during certain stretches. You could see it clearly on track. The car looked planted, it was consistent lap after lap, and he was executing everything exactly as he needed to. Then came that late restart, and that's precisely where everything unraveled in an instant. Bubba Wallace, behind the wheel of the number 23 car for 23XI Racing, got into the back of Hocevar coming out of turn 4. And it wasn't some minor nudge or light contact, it was a solid enough hit to completely turn Hocevar around on the spot. At Martinsville, once a car gets spun like that, chaos erupts almost immediately in those tight confines. In the end, 12 cars got collected in that massive wreck. 12. That's the sort of incident that doesn't simply ruin one driver's afternoon. It completely reshuffles the finishing order and the points for a whole group of competitors. Hocevar was straightforward and honest in his post-race comments, saying plainly, "We got run over." And honestly, that's exactly how it appeared when you replayed the footage. He also pointed out how an earlier debris caution had already thrown a wrench into the strategy calls, and then this late race pileup just piled even more trouble on top of it all. What really stood out to me, though, was the maturity he showed in the moment. Instead of launching into a heated rant about the wreck itself, he took a step back to acknowledge and praise the speed that his team had brought to the track that day. He expressed genuine pride in what the number 77 squad had unloaded, and you could sense that this strong run wasn't some kind of one-off fluke. They had brought something real and competitive to Martinsville. Even after all the damage they had to repair on pit road, the car kept him on the lead lap, and he battled his way back through the field to finish 17th. By the way, that result ties his career-best finish at Martinsville, which speaks volumes about both the driver's resilience and the growing strength of the team behind him. Now, on the flip side of this incident, Bubba Wallace didn't try to dodge responsibility or hide from what happened. He owned up to it right away, admitting that it was a clear misjudgment on his part. He explained how the three-wide situation heading into turn 1 on that restart had already left him feeling frustrated, and then he simply overdrove the corner while trying to force something to happen in the heat of the moment. And look, if you've followed Martinsville racing for any length of time, you know that's exactly how things can unfold sometimes on this historic short track. The racing is incredibly tight, tempers naturally flare under the pressure, and one small error in judgment can snowball into a huge multi-car wreck in the blink of an eye. But here's where the situation starts to carry real weight and long-term implications. Wallace entered that race sitting third in the overall standings. After the wreck and the subsequent fallout, he plummeted all the way down to 11th. That's not a minor setback, it's a significant momentum killer that can linger. And when you layer that on top of the multiple cautions that had already fragmented the race rhythm earlier in the day, that late crash essentially rewrote the final outcome and points haul for quite a few drivers, not just the two directly involved. We also can't overlook how Chase Elliott ended up capitalizing on all that late race chaos to quietly and effectively secure the victory. It was a smart, opportunistic win that highlighted his ability to stay patient and pounce when opportunities arose amid the disorder. Hocevar, for his part, is moving forward with a positive outlook. He even mentioned looking forward to a bit of a week off before jumping back into action, including running the truck series at Rockingham Speedway and then returning to the Cup car at Bristol Motor Speedway. But for Bubba Wallace, that's where the second major story truly begins to unfold. Because now the discussion isn't solely focused on the wreck itself, it's shifting toward how he processes and handles the aftermath. Veterans around the garage and in the media have started speaking up, and when respected voices like Rick Mast and Kevin Harvick begin weighing in on the matter, you know the NASCAR community is paying close attention. Rick Mast highlighted something particularly insightful, pointing directly to the example set by Dale Earnhardt Sr., not in terms of raw aggression or on-track intimidation, but rather in terms of mindset and approach. He described how Earnhardt was always cerebral, smart, and highly calculated in his decisions. In today's point system, that kind of disciplined thinking matters more than ever before. It's no longer just about charging for the win on every single lap or every single restart. It's about finishing races cleanly, consistently stacking points, and maintaining position week after week. Mast's message was direct and clear. Bubba needs to get his mind right in those high-pressure, split-second moments. Kevin Harvick added even more layers of context to the conversation. He noted that Bubba had gotten riled up after being placed 3 wide by Hocevar on that restart, which left him in a vulnerable and uncomfortable spot. Harvick didn't hold back or sugarcoat his assessment. He essentially said that emotions got the better of Wallace in that instant. At the same time, Harvick kept things real and relatable by admitting that he himself had made similar mistakes at Martinsville in the past, losing his cool and making aggressive moves that, in hindsight, he probably shouldn't have attempted. And that honesty is exactly why this whole conversation feels so compelling and layered. It's not about assigning blame or piling on criticism. It's really about growth, learning, and evolving as a driver under the intense spotlight of the Cup Series. When you step back and look at the bigger picture for a moment, this is where the impact hits the hardest. Not too long ago, we were discussing how Bubba Wallace and his teammate Tyler Reddick were sitting 1-2 in the standings, giving 23XI Racing a commanding presence at the top early in the season. Now Bubba finds himself all the way down in 11th. That's a stark reminder of just how quickly fortunes can shift in this unforgiving sport. And with the Cup Series schedule now pointing straight toward Bristol Motor Speedway next, a notoriously intense short track and another true pressure cooker, this couldn't have come at a more pivotal or challenging time. Because if there's one venue that will immediately test a driver's patience, decision-making, and emotional control all over again, it's definitely Bristol. So when you examine both of these stories side by side, this isn't merely about one isolated wreck or a single bad restart. It's fundamentally about momentum, about composure under fire, and about how different drivers choose to respond when circumstances refuse to go their way. Carson Hocevar walks away from Martinsville carrying a renewed sense of confidence in both his car and his team, despite being an innocent victim caught up in someone else's error. Bubba Wallace, meanwhile, leaves with lingering questions, not about his raw speed or talent, which we've seen plenty of this season, but about control, decision-making in the heat of battle, and how to effectively bounce back before any frustration begins to form into a repeating pattern. And as a dedicated fan, that's precisely what makes the upcoming race so intriguing and worth watching closely. Because now we're not just tracking lap times or final results, we're observing responses, adjustments, and character in real time. Alright, now I want to hear directly from all of you in the comments section. Do you think Bubba Wallace handled that situation the wrong way? Or is this simply classic short-track racing where emotions run high and things escalate quickly in the moment? Because I'll be completely honest with you, this feels like one of those gray area moments where it's genuinely a little bit of both. If you've watched enough races at Martinsville Speedway over the years, you already understand how this track has a unique way of testing patience like almost no other venue. The tight corners, the heavy braking zones, the constant door-to-door contact, it's all designed in a way that can make tempers boil over in an instant. And when you're suddenly put 3 wide on a critical restart like Bubba was, it's easy to see how anyone could get heated and react instinctively in that split second. But at the same time, this is the NASCAR Cup Series we're talking about. This is the highest level where the absolute best drivers in the world compete, and those are exactly the situations where you have to find a way to stay composed and think one step ahead. And that's where I believe Bubba crossed the line just a little bit. Not in any dirty or malicious driving sense, but purely in terms of composure and self-control. Because when you zoom out to the bigger picture, he was running third in the championship standings heading into the race. You simply cannot afford to let one flash of frustration snowball into a costly mistake that drops you 8 spots in the points and knocks your team out of a strong position. That's precisely why experienced voices like Kevin Harvick and Rick Mast reference Dale Earnhardt Sr. in their commentary, not to celebrate unchecked aggression but to emphasize the value of smart control and strategic thinking. Earnhardt knew exactly when to push the limits aggressively, and when to strategically back off and protect his position. That kind of calculated awareness is what often separates consistently good drivers from true championship contenders over the long haul. And look, Bubba Wallace clearly has the speed. We've witnessed it multiple times already this season. He and Tyler Reddick had 23XI Racing positioned right at the top of the standings early on. So this situation has nothing at all to do with a lack of talent or raw ability. It's entirely about execution and maintaining focus when the pressure intensifies. And honestly, that's why I'm not ready to write him off or get overly negative after this incident. If anything, I'm even more curious than ever to see exactly how he responds when the green flag drops at Bristol Motor Speedway, because that track is going to challenge him again right away and without mercy. In my opinion, this was ultimately a mistake born out of frustration in a high-stress short-track environment, but it's also the kind of thing that happens regularly in classic Martinsville racing. The real narrative now centers on what comes next for him, because this type of moment can either serve as a wake-up call that sharpens a driver's focus or it can kick off a downward spiral, and in NASCAR, there's usually very little middle ground between those two outcomes. If Bubba arrives at Bristol Motor Speedway with a clear head and manages to channel that frustration into sharper focus and better decision-making, then this whole episode could actually become the much-needed reset that propels him back into the top-tier conversation for the rest of the season. But if even a trace of that frustration lingers and carries over, Bristol will expose it immediately and without hesitation. That place doesn't just punish mistakes, it multiplies them and turns small errors into major consequences. And the concerning reality is that the standings remain incredibly tight at this point in the year. One additional bad race and suddenly you're no longer battling for wins, you're scrambling just to stay relevant in the playoff picture. On the other hand, when you look at Carson Hocevar, there's clearly something solid and promising starting to build with his program. The speed is legitimate, the confidence is visibly growing with each outing, and even after being swept up in that late mess at Martinsville Speedway, he still managed to salvage a respectable result and carry positive momentum out of the weekend. That's exactly how you lay the foundation for a strong, consistent season. So yeah, the next race isn't just another event on the calendar, it's going to be all about responses and how these drivers adapt. And as fans, that's precisely why we'll all be glued to the action from the very moment that green flag waves. Drop your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. Hit that like button if you enjoyed this breakdown. And if you're someone who appreciates real, honest NASCAR conversations without any fluff, make sure to subscribe to NASCAR Nation Report. Like I mentioned earlier, we're a brand new channel working hard to hit that 15,000 subscriber mark. And it's all about fans talking NASCAR the way it truly should be talked about, straight from the heart of the sport. I'll catch you in the next one.